Supported myself since I was 12, never took a cent from my family. Bought my own house at 23, and my parents sued me for ruining my sister's chances. I, 26M, learned how to survive before most kids learned how to tie their shoes. At 12, I was washing dishes at a corner diner every evening after school, my hands raw from the scalding water and industrial soap. The money went straight into a jar I kept hidden in the back of my closet. Not because I wanted to save up for a bike or video games, but because I knew nobody else was going to take care of me. My parents had decided, somewhere along the line, that my sister was the investment worth making. She was 2 years younger, and from the moment she showed a hint of talent at piano, they poured everything into her. Lessons, recitals, competitions, private tutors. Meanwhile, I wore thrift store clothes and made my own lunches from whatever I could scrounge. When I asked for $20 for a school field trip, my mother looked at me like I'd requested a kidney. She told me they couldn't spare it. The money was going toward my sister's upcoming competition. She needed a new dress, and the registration fee was steep. I nodded and said I understood. Then I picked up another shift at the diner. By 15, I was working 3 jobs. The diner, a weekend gig at a grocery store, and odd jobs around the neighborhood. Lawn mowing, snow shoveling, whatever people needed. I learned to budget like my life depended on it because, in a way, it did. Every dollar was accounted for. Food, clothes, school supplies. I never asked my parents for anything, and they never offered. My sister flourished under their attention. She won competitions, got into a prestigious music program, had her picture in the local paper. My parents beamed with pride at every accomplishment, posting about her endlessly on social media. Meanwhile, I was a ghost in my own home. I came and went, working and studying, and they barely noticed. At family dinners, they asked her about her day, her performances, her dreams. When they looked at me, if they looked at me, it was only to mention that I seemed tired or to ask if I could keep the noise down because my sister was practicing. I graduated high school with honors and a full scholarship to a state university. My parents didn't come to the graduation. My sister had a recital that same weekend, 3 hours away. They told me they were proud, sent a text with a thumbs-up emoji, and that was it. I moved into the dorms with everything I owned in 2 duffel bags and a backpack. College was hard, but I was used to hard. I kept working, kept saving, kept my head down. My degree was in computer science, and I discovered I had a knack for it. I landed internships, networked relentlessly, and by the time I graduated, I had a job offer at a tech company with a salary that made my 19-year-old self want to cry. I saved aggressively, lived with roommates in a cramped apartment, drove a beat-up car I'd bought for cash, ate rice and beans more nights than I care to remember. By 23, I had enough for a down payment on a small house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom place with a backyard and a mortgage I could afford. The day I got the keys, I sat on the floor of the empty living room and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Accomplishment. Security. I posted a picture of the house on social media. Just the front exterior, with a caption about hard work paying off. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing. Friends congratulating me, former coworkers sending well wishes. Then my mother called. She didn't congratulate me. She asked if I'd really bought a house, her voice tight and strange. I told her I had, waiting for some kind of acknowledgement, maybe even belated pride. Instead, she asked how much I'd paid. I gave her a vague answer, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. She pressed, wanting to know about my salary, my savings, how I'd managed it all. I told her I'd worked hard and saved. She went quiet for a moment, then said we needed to talk as a family. My stomach dropped, but I agreed. We set a time for that weekend, and I drove to their house with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. My father opened the door, his expression grim. My mother sat at the kitchen table, my sister beside her looking upset. Nobody said congratulations. Nobody offered me a drink or asked how I was settling in. My father told me to sit down, and I did, feeling like I was 12 again and in trouble for something I didn't understand. My mother started by saying they'd been discussing my situation. She said they were concerned about how my success would affect my sister. I asked what she meant, genuinely confused. My father jumped in, explaining that my sister was 24 and still living at home, still trying to make it as a professional musician. She was talented, he said, but the industry was brutal. She was struggling, and now, with me buying a house at 23, it made her look bad. I stared at them. Made her look bad. Those were the words he used. I asked how my buying a house with my own money had anything to do with my sister. My mother's face hardened. She said I was being selfish, that I'd always been focused on myself, and now I was flaunting my success while my sister struggled. I pointed out, as calmly as I could, that I'd been supporting myself since I was 12, that I'd never taken a cent from them, that every dollar I'd earned alone. My father cut me off, saying that was exactly the problem. By being so independent, I'd made them look like bad parents. People were asking them why their son bought a house before their daughter, implying they'd failed her somehow. My sister finally spoke, her voice shaking. She said it wasn't fair that I had a house when she was still trying to get her career off the ground. She said I should have considered how it would make her feel, how it would affect her prospects. Apparently, she'd been talking to a guy she liked, someone from her music circle, and when he found out her younger brother owned a house, he'd made a comment about her still living with her parents. She blamed me for embarrassing her. I sat there, absorbing this. They weren't proud of me. They weren't happy for me. They were angry, resentful. They felt I'd somehow wronged them by succeeding on my own. I asked what they wanted me to do. Sell the house? Give them the money? My mother said that wouldn't be necessary, but they thought I should help my sister. Financially, she needed her own place, needed to look established if she was going to attract the right kind of partner and opportunities. They suggested I either sell my house and split the proceeds with her, or help her with a down payment on a place of her own. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all hit me at once, and I laughed. My father's face went red. He told me this wasn't funny, that family helped family. I asked where that philosophy had been when I was 12 and scrubbing dishes. When I was 16 and working 3 jobs. When I was walking across a stage to get my diploma alone because they couldn't be bothered to show up. My mother's expression turned cold. She said I was holding grudges, that they'd done their best with the resources they had. They'd invested in my sister because she had a gift, something worth nurturing. I'd always been independent, self-sufficient. I didn't need them the way she did. I pointed out that independence wasn't a choice I'd made willingly. It was survival. They didn't respond to that. The conversation ended badly. I left, angry and hurt, and thought that was the end of it. They'd made their feelings clear, and I'd made mine clear. We'd go back to our separate lives, and maybe, eventually, the resentment would fade. 2 months later, I was served with a lawsuit. My parents were suing me. Update 1. The lawsuit claimed I owed them for back child support and living expenses from ages 12 to 18. They itemized everything. Food, utilities, a portion of rent, even clothes I barely remembered them buying me. They claimed that because I'd been working during that time and keeping my earnings, I'd been living off them without contributing. Now that I had assets, they wanted reimbursement. Plus, they were claiming emotional distress. According to the filing, my public display of success while my sister struggled had caused them significant mental anguish and damaged their reputation in the community. I sat in my lawyer's office, the papers spread out in front of me, and felt numb. My lawyer, an older woman with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, told me the case was ridiculous. Parents had a legal obligation to provide for their minor children. I didn't know them anything. But, she warned, they could still drag this out, make it expensive and messy. She asked if I wanted to fight or settle. I told her to fight. Every instinct I had screamed to make this go away quietly, but something deeper, angrier, said no. They'd neglected me, dismissed me, and now they wanted to profit from my success. I wasn't going to let them. We filed a counterclaim. My lawyer was thorough. She dug up records from my jobs, proving I'd been working since 12. She found witnesses, former teachers and neighbors, willing to testify about the conditions I'd lived in. She uncovered financial records showing how much my parents had spent on my sister compared to me. It was staggering. Tens of thousands on lessons, competitions, travel. Meanwhile, I had receipts for thrift store purchases I'd made myself. The case went to mediation first. My parents showed up with their own lawyer, a sleazy guy who smirked at me across the table. My mother looked righteous, my father stern. My sister wasn't there, but I knew she supported them. The mediator tried to find common ground, suggesting a small settlement to make it all go away. My parents wanted $50,000. My lawyer laughed and said we'd see them in court. During the discovery phase, things got ugly. My lawyer subpoenaed financial records, emails, text messages. We found evidence that my parents had discussed my success with their friends, complaining about how it made them look. There were texts between my mother and sister about how unfair it was that I had a house. My sister had written that I was rubbing it in her face, that I'd always been selfish. My mother had agreed, saying I needed to be taken down a peg. The worst part was finding out they'd been planning this for a while. The lawsuit wasn't a spontaneous reaction. They'd consulted with the lawyer months before, right after I posted the picture of the house. They'd been strategizing, looking for an angle. The child support claim was their best shot, even though they knew it was weak. They were banking on me settling out of fear or guilt. When we finally got to court, the judge was unimpressed with their case from the start. My lawyer presented everything methodically. My work history, the financial disparities, the testimony from people who'd known our family. A former teacher testified that I'd come to school in the same worn-out shoes for 2 winters straight, while my sister had new clothes regularly. A neighbor testified that I'd been mowing lawns and shoveling driveways since I was 13, often coming home late on school nights. My parents' lawyer tried to paint me as a selfish son who'd abandoned his family. He argued that my success was only possible because of the foundation my parents had provided, the roof over my head during my formative years. My lawyer dismantled that argument by showing that the bare minimum wasn't a gift, it was a legal requirement. She also pointed out that if my parents wanted to claim credit for my success, they'd have to explain why they'd invested nothing in me while pouring resources into my sister. The judge asked my father directly why they treated their children so differently. My father stammered something about my sister's talent being exceptional, about tough choices. The judge asked if I hadn't shown exceptional qualities as well. Independence, work ethic, academic achievement. My father had no answer. When it was my turn to testify, I kept my emotions in check. I laid out the facts. The jobs, the hours, the isolation. I explained that I'd never asked for luxury, just basic acknowledgement. I told the court about missing my high school graduation, about sitting on the floor of my empty house feeling proud for the first time in my life. I said I didn't hate my parents, but I didn't owe them anything either. I'd paid my own way since childhood, and I'd earned everything I had. The judge ruled in my favor, dismissed the case entirely, and ordered my parents to pay my legal fees. It was a complete victory, but it didn't feel like one. My parents left the courtroom without looking at me. My mother was crying, my father looked furious. I knew this was the end. Whatever fragile connection we'd had, it was severed now. Update 2. The fallout was swift. My parents made themselves out to be the victims, telling anyone who'd listened that I'd taken them to court and humiliated them. My sister posted on social media about toxic family members and cutting off negative influences. She didn't name me, but everyone knew. I received messages from distant relatives, some supportive, many accusatory. How could I do this to my parents? Didn't I care about family? I blocked most of them and moved on. But the story didn't stay contained. Someone, I'm still not sure who, leaked details to a local news blog. The headline was something like, "Local Parents Sue Successful Son, Lose Spectacularly." It went semi-viral in our area. People had opinions. Most sided with me, calling my parents entitled and neglectful. A few sided with them, saying families should support each other regardless of past issues. My parents' reputation took a hit. Friends distanced themselves. My mother's social media went quiet. My sister's music career never took off the way they'd hoped. Last I heard, she was teaching piano lessons and working part-time at a music store. She eventually moved out of my parents' house, but into a small apartment, not the dream setup they'd envisioned. I don't know if she ever found the guy she was trying to impress. I don't really care. As for me, I'm doing well. I got a promotion, paid off a chunk of my mortgage early, and I'm in a relationship with someone who thinks my story is inspiring rather than shameful. I've built a life on my terms, surrounded by people who appreciate effort and integrity. I don't miss my family. That probably sounds cold, but it's the truth. They were never really there for me, so their absence isn't much of a loss. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things turned out, if I wish I'd just paid them off and moved on. The answer is no. They needed to understand that I wasn't their backup plan or their ATM, that I was a person who'd survived despite them, not because of them. Fighting back wasn't about revenge, though I won't lie and say it didn't feel good to win. It was about drawing a line, about saying that some things aren't forgivable and some relationships aren't worth saving. I still live in that house. I've made it my own, filled it with things I care about. On hard days, I remind myself where I came from and what I've built. That 12-year-old kid washing dishes didn't know if he'd make it. But he did. And nobody, not even the people who were supposed to love him, can take that away.